Hello everyone. Today's case is extremely disturbing, but I definitely think it's an important case to talk about because the topic of who you allow your children around should be discussed more often. But all around this case is just a horrific example of layered abuse. Just weeks ago, 16-year-old Christian Gonzalez was charged with the murder of his girlfriend's 4-year-old daughter, but the disturbing details don't just end there. So let's start at the beginning. 23-year-old Destiny Rose was living in Evansville, Indiana, a small city on the border of Kentucky on the Ohio River. Living in the apartment with Destiny was her 4-year-old daughter, Octavia Aquino, her underage boyfriend, Christian, and 2 other adult roommates at the Spring Valley Flats. But let's just stop there, because why is a 23-year-old dating a 16-year-old? That doesn't sit right with me, even though I looked it up and the legal age of consent in Indiana is 16. In my opinion, that is extremely inappropriate. And in my opinion, and in my eyes, Destiny is a PDF file, even though according to the law, she probably isn't. Which I think that is a whole issue with that too. But hey, it's actually not just me in this case. The father side of Destiny's child's family actually agrees and thinks that this was a completely inappropriate relationship as well, which we will hear from them about that. But it doesn't just end there, because Christian was actually reported missing from Fort Wayne, Indiana. So he was technically a missing child from 300 miles away from home. And it would turn out that there was actually an active protective order against Destiny, as well as an active EPD criminal case against her after she allegedly helped Christian escape from a detention facility in Evansville. And she also aided in him running away from his guardians in Fort Wayne in February of this year.
We were aware of an inappropriate relationship with the mom and that boy that had gone on for a while, even when she was here living with us in Fort Wayne. We didn't know that it was like romantic, but nonetheless, we had, expressed our concerns with her hanging out with minors. And, I told her multiple times that I didn't think that it was going to end well, but she just wouldn't listen. When her and my son kind of split up and she went down to Evansville, we were originally unaware that she had taken him with her until the grandmother of him reached out to me. And then I did like my own little bit of investigation work and found out that he was there. The initial arrest of her before, with the pending charges that she already had, was because of me reporting where he was. I found out that by a mutual friend who was about to go just surprise her at work. When she went to pull into the driveway, she had saw them together and she let me know. And so I sent the police there to pick him up because he was a minor and a runaway. After all that played out with the court and everything, she did come back to Fort Wayne for a while, and I thought her and my son were going to work things out. She had to go back down to Evansville for her court date, and apparently she brought him back down. But we were unaware. The grandmother never reached out to us. We didn't know that. We just were under the impression that he was living with his family, and Destiny, was doing the right thing, staying away from him because of, the charges and the restraining order and whatnot. We didn't know the people that she was staying with the time that she was down there. She was initially supposed to come back home, but the car had some issues, and so it didn't, she wasn't able to get back here. We know that she was lying to the people that she was living with. When she stayed with them, she introduced Christian as Alex and told them that he was 20 years old. Everybody, was aware of the situation, but not everybody knew what Christian looked like. The people that she lived with didn't know. Anytime she went and visited other people in Evansville who knew who Christian was, she never brought him around. But she talked about how she had a new boyfriend named Alex. So no one put 2 and 2 together. They just thought that she had a new boyfriend.
So in a way, she definitely lured this young 16-year-old off and was basically harboring him in her home while also being in a relationship with him. The levels of it are just so messed up. But at the same time, Christian isn't innocent in any of this, because there was actually a prior incident between Christian and Destiny's 4-year-old daughter, Octavia, where he allegedly caused bruises on her as well as spanked her. causing the paternal grandmother Linda to become very upset over this information. And she warned Destiny that Octavia shouldn't be around Christian because he was violent and that their relationship was inappropriate.
Witnesses, people that lived inside the home, witnessed him do certain things to this child that should have never happened over a span of time. And we're not just talking about, you know, this happened on Thursday or this happened on Friday. Ever since the mother was dating this 16-year-old, he apparently was just not doing the right things.
And Octavia did seem to have a very good relationship with her father and her paternal side of the family. And Destiny also seemed at one point to have a very close relationship with the father of her child's family. But things would get more separated and secretive after Destiny ended up moving over to Evansville, which was hours away, meaning that Octavia's father and his side of the family had a harder time, you know, watching and seeing what was going on.
I'm shocked that she allowed it to happen. I'm not shocked that he did this, because when they were together the first time, he had hurt Octavia. And when I found out about it, I had gone off. And I warned Destiny, and I told her that she better not ever have him around again. And, you know, why would you even have him around? So I'm shocked that she chose to continue to be in an inappropriate relationship with him, knowing that he was violent and he had a lot of issues. His home life was not good. But her excuse was constantly that she was trying to help him because of his home life. And I understand, but that wasn't your job. Your job was to protect your daughter.
You said that he had previously harmed Octavia. What happened?
He had spanked her and left some bruises on her before the first time that they had gone down there, and a mutual friend of ours had made me aware of them. And so I went down there and I got Octavia and brought her back, and she had bruises on her. And so, like I said, when all of that played out and I found out, where they were staying, and I sent the cops there to pick him up. And after having all the conversations with her and really believing that, she was going to do better and that she had learned her lesson. And, I understood where her heart was because of Chris's home life, but I thought that she understood that this was not her problem. This was not something that she needed to be dealing with. This was something that, his family and authorities and CPS and all needed to be dealing with.
He shouldn't have been there, and if we would have known he was even there, then she never would have went down there.
Octavia's uncle, Caleb Aquino, tells me
she always wanted to put other things or people in front of her kid, but we didn't want to be those people that kept her from her mother.
4-year-old Octavia was described as the sweetest little girl. She was described by family as kind, a ray of sunshine, and I think you can just see that from the photos of her. She, and I quote, brought joy to anyone she encountered, end quote. And it was said she didn't have an ounce of meanness in her. After Destiny moved herself and Octavia down to Evansville, Octavia would often call her grandmother Linda and tell her that she wanted ice cream. So then Linda would end up sending Destiny some money so that she could take Octavia to get a sundae. And then afterwards, Octavia would end up calling her grandmother and thanking her and just telling her about the whole experience of going to get ice cream and just how happy it made this little girl. But things would take a turn on June 13th of 2024, just weeks ago as I'm filming this video. That day, a roommate would notice that Octavia had a bite mark on her arm as well as several bruises on her neck. Destiny ended up being informed about this, and when she arrived home from work, she ended up confronting Christian about them, and Christian claimed that the cat was the one who bit the little girl, even though it very much so didn't look like a cat bite. Feeling something was off, Destiny ended up lying to Christian, telling him that there was a camera in the living room and that she was going to check the footage to see what actually happened. So then Christian changed his tune, and he would finally admit that he did in fact bite Octavia, but claimed that he did it because Octavia bit him first, which from all accounts would have been completely out of character for this sweet little girl to have bit someone. The affidavit reads that Destiny would later tell officers that Octavia had told her as well that Christian had, and I quote, covered her mouth and bit her. End quote. However, Destiny didn't decide to do anything after she found out that her 16-year-old boyfriend attacked her child, her 4-year-old daughter, because she was scared that she would get in trouble for harboring him in her home. She didn't want to go to jail for harboring a minor, among other things. Because again, there was a protective order. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near him. And it would turn out she was actually lying to people about who he really was. So even the roommates didn't know who he was. So instead, she allowed a dangerous individual to continue to live with her 4-year-old daughter. This is just honestly another case of a woman choosing someone else over her child. And I don't even want to say her choosing a man over a child, because this wasn't a man. Again, this was a 16-year-old, and on top of that, no man does that to a child. He is a sorry excuse for a man or for a person in general. And this woman chose someone else over her child regardless. Later that night, the adults in the home would notice that Octavia started displaying odd behaviors. They noticed she was staring off into space and that she was nauseous. At one point, she threw up, and all she ate that day was some Cheetos. The affidavit reading, and I quote, "Destiny agreed that this could have been because her daughter had just been strangled and bit by the male," end quote. Yet still, Destiny didn't do anything. She didn't call 911. She didn't take her daughter to get medical help or separate her daughter from the individual who attacked her. Instead, she simply told Christian to never do it again and lied to him, saying there was a camera in the room, hoping that that would kind of deter his actions and that, he wouldn't do that again. At one point, I heard that she actually even left Octavia with Christian again that evening so that she could go to McDonald's. Just the lack of care and the lack of fear is it's mind-blowing to me here. The next morning, which was Friday, June 14th, one of the roommates would arrive home from work from their job, which was a third shift job, so they arrived home in the morning. And they would find little Octavia either lying on the couch or on a mattress in the living room. I've heard two different variations of the story, but Octavia was said to be completely unresponsive. Her eyes were wide open and she was cold to the touch. And Christian was actually said to be sitting next to her body. And when the roommate allegedly asked Christian what happened, he told her that Octavia just slept with her eyes open. Authorities would end up being called for a medical emergency by that roommate, who would identify themselves as one of Destiny's best friends. Sadly, these roommates seemed to be more concerned than the actual mother in this case. When authorities would arrive, Octavia would end up being rushed to the hospital and put on life support, and it was reported that she had very little brain activity at this point. The affidavit once again noted at this point that Octavia had a bite mark on her right arm, as well as bruising on her legs and neck. Again, it was one of the roommates that ended up telling police that Christian was actually living with them and that the night before he had bit Octavia. Police would end up finding Christian hiding in the upstairs bathroom, and he would actually lie about his identity at first, and then he was eventually arrested. Destiny would also end up being arrested alongside her underage reported boyfriend. She would go on to tell police, according to the affidavit, and I quote, Destiny said she tried to get the male to go home several times, but that he was a very manipulative child and that she loved him as a son, end quote. She also alleged that he was remorseful for what he did because he cried in the bathroom for an hour afterwards and thought the fake camera would deter him. So that was the reasoning for her keeping this individual around her 4-year-old defenseless daughter. And 2 days later, sadly, on Father's Day, Octavia would end up succumbing to her injuries and she would pass away. This little girl was murdered. In the aftermath of the news, Octavia's grandmother, Linda, would go on to say, and I quote, "I feel lost, I feel broken. She's just one of the happiest, always smiles, full of life, spunky little girls I've ever met in my life," end quote. Linda would later go on to Long Crime Network Sidebar to do an interview, and she actually gave a lot more detail and information of behind the scenes of what was going on before all of this happened. Autopsy would show that Octavia had multiple bruises on her body, including a bite mark on her arm. Her official cause of death ended up being blunt force trauma to her head and neck. The final autopsy is still pending for things like the forensics and toxicological analysis, so that's all we really have at the moment. And in a very heroic decision by the family, mainly Octavia's father, they decided to donate Octavia's organs to other children in need so that other lives could be saved. That is just such a selfless decision to make, to allow Octavia to go on to help other children. And that has to be such a hard decision for a parent to make, considering just all of the emotions that they are going through over Octavia's death. Christian would initially be arrested and booked into the youth care center on charges of battery with serious bodily injury, which is a level 5 felony, and is also charged with a misdemeanor of false informing. A week later, he'd appear before a judge at the Vanderbilt County Superior Court, where he was waived as a juvenile and is now being tried as an adult, and his charges were upgraded to murder after Octavia passed away. Now, Destiny at this point is being charged with neglect of a dependent resulting in death, which is a level 3 felony, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor and invasion of privacy, both of those which are misdemeanors. She actually ended up pleading not guilty, and she was also restricted from having contact with Octavia's father. Now, this is what Octavia's paternal side of the family had to say about Destiny and just more insight on the situation.
Time my son would come over, they would play, and I just actually had my son over the weekend, and he was constantly asking when was she going to come over and play with him, and it was kind of heartbreaking. I couldn't tell him. I was just like, she'll be here eventually. It's just like all I could really say to a 2.5-year-old. It's not really going to get the concept of what's going on.
What is something that you wish you could tell her today?
And just how much we all love her, and that we wish we could have protected her.
I don't understand how you let this happen. Your one job was to protect her. She was supposed to be your #1 priority, and you failed her. You knew that you weren't supposed to be around that person that did this to her, and you chose him over your own daughter. And because of you, we will never see her laugh. We will never see her smile. I will never hear her voice ever again, and it's not fair.
Again, this case is just so absolutely senseless and heartbreaking, and I really think this is something we need to continue to talk about because this can't continue to happen over and over again. We need to be so careful about who we allow our children near. And I know I'm basically preaching to the choir because I'm sure everyone watching this right now already knows that, but clearly there are still people out there who it just, for some reason, can't get through their heads. Little Octavia did not deserve this. She was a defenseless little 4-year-old girl up against a stronger, bigger male. And her life wasn't just taken from her, it was taken from her entire family, who are now never going to watch her grow up. And as we've seen, this wasn't just a one-time thing. There were red flags. And her father's side of the family tried to tell Destiny and try to speak to her and try to help and do something, yet it's just crazy and it's just awful. Just plain and simple, it's just so awful. My heart goes out to Octavia's family. And I truly, truly hope that Destiny and Christian get sentenced and get punished appropriately for what they did here. Because this should not just be a slap on the wrist, especially for Destiny as well. She allowed this to happen. And in my opinion, she's also a predator, but that's just me. But what I do want to know is what you all think. Does this make you as mad as it's made me? I'm going to be in the comment section with you all chatting about this case. If there are any cases that you want me to look into, leave those down below as well, and I will add them to my list. And again, my heart goes out to Octavia's family. This is just an absolute tragedy. As always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video.